who is the Assistant News Director at WMC in Memphis. So thank you so much for joining our class.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Samantha, talk to us a little bit about how you got involved in news. Is this something that you went to school looking to do? Is this something that you've always had an interest in?
It is, when I was in high school, it really kind of is when I was first really most interested in it. And I was one of those people that thought I wanted to be on air. And so that was always kind of the dream. And then I went to college and they ended up not having a communications or journalism degree. So I kind of had to build, and I was told I could build my own major, and then that ended up not working out. So I majored in political science and then took evening classes as well for communications, and interned at KSDK, the NBC affiliate in St. Louis. So I was able to kind of get my foot in the door there and started there as a production assistant when I graduated. But the summer before I graduated, I was an intern at WMC in Memphis. So I was able to come here and, you know, kind of see different aspects of the business from all sides, in the field, behind the scenes. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a producer and not be on air. And so from there, after I was a PA in St. Louis for a few months, they had an opening here at WMC for a weekend producer, kind of a grow your own position. And so I came back here and kind of worked my way up: weekend producer, 10 o'clock producer, nightside EP, assistant news director.
So yeah, so I mean, talk about create your own job. You did a good job at getting there. That's interesting. So you've seen a lot of changes.
You know, just a lot in terms of both content and, you know, how we get the newscast on the air. In the time that I've been at WMC, we recently automated, so that was a big change as well. So, you know, producers, when I started, were responsible simply for, you know, selecting stories, writing, you know, the newscast, making some graphic selections. And now our producers are doing all of that in addition to editing a majority of their own video and actually building those graphics. So just technically a lot of things have changed. Obviously the digital side of things has increased tenfold even since I started. So that's been a big change for us as well. And, you know, honestly, just the experience level, when I came in, I was kind of the beginning for our station of having someone come in after just having graduated college and really, you know, starting from the ground up. And, you know, just with being the market that we are, you know, usually you like to have someone come in with a little bit of experience, because Memphis has so much news and so much craziness. You don't want to throw someone totally into the fire. But we really kind of still do that for people that have really found a passion for this and have a knack for it. We actually, in the middle of the pandemic a few months ago, hired an intern to come back as a full-time producer, because we added news time and we didn't have people, and she's really, you know, taken to it and come straight to it. So there's a lot about you know, this business that, you know, if you have the knack for it and the passion for it, you know, there's opportunities if you just, you know, keep pushing.
One of the things that we are talking a lot about in this class is storytelling. We're talking about news stories, we'll do podcasts, we're going to do a screenplay. All these are, I know, right? But the overriding arc is it's telling a story. So talk to me a little bit about what makes a news story a good news story. How do you say that's what we need to go cover? That's a great story.
I think for us, there's a few different things that really help the story rise to the level of our interest. Obviously, the broad appeal. If you have a story that's really going to impact a great number of your viewers, that's going to be something that rises ahead of some of the others right away. Also something that just has high interest. It may not impact your life directly, but if we're listening to someone pitch it and, you know, you're glued to their pitch, or everybody starts talking about it, clearly it's a talker, clearly it's something that people are excited about. You know, or a story that might be interesting and then find a way to make it have a broader appeal. So, you know, maybe you have a particular crime in one area or something that happens at one school. And so you're like, okay, well, that's interesting, but how do I make people care? And that's really the big thing about storytelling, is what can you do to get people to care?
So I think that actually sort of goes into what I'm wondering next, which is how does a reporter pitch you? They come to a story meeting and they sit down and they've got their story ideas. What's a good pitch?
Actually have just recently redesigned our story pitch meetings. And so to be completely honest, it was something that I was kind of in on at the very beginning. And then a lot of this happened since I've been on maternity leave. So I haven't been there for it yet. But the genesis for it was we, used to have editorial meetings all in person, all in the same room. Everybody, talks around a table and, you can talk over each other. You can have these big conversations. Then it went to, Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and it started to be where you've got the same three people talking the whole time, and it was, are we really getting the most out of these pitches, out of these stories? How do we help, elevate the stories that we're telling? So we kind of reconfigured the meeting, and part of reconfiguring the meeting was reconfiguring how our reporters and producers and anybody really pitches a story. And so we've created kind of a format for people to send in their pitches. And so we've asked the people send in their pitches before the morning and evening meetings, which kind of just helps make sure for them that they've got everything down, in the best possible way. Because sometimes we would have people pitch stories and they were good stories, but they weren't pitching them the right way. So it wasn't coming across. So this kind of helps formulate thoughts. And so basically in the story submission form, it has you put, what is your headline? Like what's going to be the attention grabbing, first sentence of the story, headline on the digital story. And then we ask, just logistics, that kind of thing. What would you need to make the story happen today? Live shot location, and then a story synopsis so that you're really getting the chance to put down ahead of time what's the most important thing in that story. What are you telling? And then your video or sound goals, because obviously storytelling in a television news medium is different than telling it, in a newspaper story or even just a regular digital story. Visuals and sound is really going to be what sells it for us on air. And then as well, digital goals, because we are multi-platform. And so we want to be able to provide people additional material on the digital platform and have, viewers be able to find the story there as well. So this kind of helps put everything in one place. And so the biggest thing about the pitch, once you've got that down, is what is the selling point? What is the headline? What will grab viewers' attention? And so that is something, you don't want the headline to be just something that you casually think of after the fact. What is going to sell that story for you? And then what is the most important who, what, where, when, and why of the story? What's going to make it, most interesting to your viewers, and what's going to make us as a news team think that's a better story to do today than something else. So really kind of focusing your pitch and explaining why it's important.
So do you feel like there's a formula for storytelling, or does it vary on reporter? Does it vary by story?
I think it can vary by reporter and story. I've worked with some excellent reporters who really kind of have their own formula down, but they make it work for any kind of story that they tell, and they're not unwilling to tailor it if they're focusing on something maybe more emotional than just something more nuts and bolts. But I think it kind of depends. I think that you do have to try and not get caught up in the emotion of a story where you're forgetting some of those important details, the who, what, where, when, and why. And then I think also you don't want to forget the emotion of the story. You really, I think sound with television news storytelling is so important. And, that's been something that's been a little bit tricky of late because, talking to people, you're either talking to them like this, you're not necessarily finding them in person as much as we did just a year ago. But, you want, as much as you want that information, you also want the emotion. You want, that is going to be what gets your viewer to understand why this story is important and why they should pay attention. And so I think good sound, good emotion, and then just making sure you have all the pertinent information is really what kind of goes into the best storytelling. And, as long as you're including all of that and finding the best way to tell it, you're going to sell someone on your story.
And I think one thing that we tell reporters here is try to read, try to listen, try to be aware of what's going on in the world around you. I mean, are there things that you do to encourage your reporters to have a sense of not just broad, but community appeal, things that work in your market?
Absolutely. I think that we try and, when we have new reporters come into the market, we do what we can to get them better acquainted with our market, different neighborhoods, different community groups, that kind of thing. So they understand that. So they understand, for us, that they understand the history of Memphis. We're a very big civil rights city. We have the National Civil Rights Museum. So understanding the background there and the history and what's important to our viewers. I mean, it's something that we talk about with, reporters from the interview when they're first, looking to come here, because there's so much, Memphis is a good combined city of people who've been here for a really long time and new, members of the city. And so we really want to try and make sure everybody understands where we've been and where we're going and why that's important. And just also that they, have an appetite for news as well, that they're looking at news both on the local, national, international level, that they're watching other local news, that they're looking other places, that they're curious, and that also helps play into the storytelling, because if you're curious, you're going to be looking for, that next investigative angle, or not taking something at face value and perhaps finding an even better story than you thought you were telling on the surface.
Samantha Armstrong, Assistant News Director, WMC-TV in Memphis. Thank you.